What's up, everyone? Uh, this video is kind of a response, I guess, would be. Yeah. Foolkiller 5150 had shown a great G.I. Joe #1 and had a great story behind it. And he asked, what is your most favorite book, the one that's most precious, I guess? For me, I actually have three. I know I'm greedy, but these books, the three of these, mean the most to me in all the world, I guess. So if I had to grab, something in a fire, and these I knew exactly where they were, which I usually do. These are the ones I would grab, and they're not big money books. They're just they have a lot of meaning behind them. Um, could I show the ones I had signed by Stan Lee? Yeah, those mean a lot too, but they don't mean as much as these three books do. Basically, it's the West Coast Avengers #36, which is in really, really rough shape. And the reason for that is this is the first comic book I ever got in my life. First one. I had gone to a comic book store. I've said this story a couple times, but what the hell, I'll do it again. Went to a comic book store because my cousin was huge into comics, and he still is. Uh, and he's like, oh, he was visiting, and he's like, I want to go to a comic book store. You know any? I'm like, no. All I knew around were toy stores. I didn't know anything about comic book stores. I never went into one. I never wanted to go into one. I knew who Spider-Man was, but I didn't know, like, in depth who Spider-Man was, things like that. I knew who the Hulk was, but, not to the level I know now. And we walked into this place, and I was just like, oh my god, But then I was overcome by, like, the smell of the books. You're like, that's interesting. I like that. And my cousin was in there for, like, an hour, and I was like, I'm looking around. I'm like, this stuff is cool, And I'm looking and looking. I'm like, this is just, what are these characters? Who the hell are these guys? And I wasn't really paying attention to what he was doing. I was just kind of looking around and just amazed. And then we left and went back to his grandmother's house. And he was going through the books that he got and putting them in bags and boards. And I saw this one he pulled out that he was getting ready to put in a bag and the board. And I said, whoa. I was like, who's that guy? Amazingly, I fell in love with Wonder Man, I guess. It's weird. And I thought he was like Black Widow Man or something like that, because I'm looking at him, he had the big, the red eyes and the big W on his black chest. And I saw Hawkeye and this guy shooting a beam out. I'm like, who the hell is that? And my cousin's like, oh, it's Wonder Man, and this is the Avengers. And I'm like, who the hell are the Avengers? And he was going into it and explaining. The more he explained about the characters, the more I was like, this is awesome. And before I left, I was like, can I have one? And he was kind of like, because when you're a comic fan, you don't want to give away your comics. And he's like, which one? I was like, I really want this one. And he was nice enough. He's like, all right. And he's like, you can have it. And this, like I said, is the first book I ever got. I took it home that day and read it dozens of times to the point where it's almost falling apart. So it's a special comic in my heart that I would never get rid of, no matter how damaged it is. It's got, like, it's starting to get a tear going across here, but eventually I will get another one just to have, but this one will always be a special comic, because, like I said, it was my first one I ever got, and this is what got me started on comic books. Moving on to #2. This is Amazing Spider-Man #102, which is the second appearance of Morbius and the first giant-sized issue of Spider-Man. And I guess this is kind of like a money book, not by much, but this is important to me because my mother got it for me when I was a kid for my 10th birthday, which was really cool. It was actually at the comic book store I first started working at when I was a little, well, not really, but when you're a little kid, you're not technically working. But I had gone in there when I was 9, and I saw this thing, and it was, very expensive. It was $35 or something, $30 or $35. Might have even been 38, but it was in the 30s. Let's put it that way. And $30 back then was a lot of money. It's not like today. Like $30 is chump change, but $30 back then was a lot of money. That was, an expensive book. And I had told my mother, I was like, oh, it's worth a lot of money. And she's like, really? She's like, why is it worth a lot of money? I was like, oh, it's the second appearance of this vampire guy, and it's when Spider-Man loses his arms, his extra arms. And I was like, it's just a really cool cover, and if you got it for me, it'd be the oldest Spider-Man book I ever had, and everybody would think I'm cool because I have these really old comics, and a whole big, you trying to convince your parents. And my mother's like, well, you never know, maybe down the line. And of course, you get all pissed off. You're like, I'm not getting that book. And for my 10th birthday, I got tons of toys. I was excited, G.I. Joes, Ninja Turtles, tons of Nintendo games. And I was like, it's cool. And then the last box I opened, it was this. And when I took it out, I was just like, all the toys and everything didn't matter. As much as I love them and everything and still do, this was the most important thing because I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, oh my god. I was like, I have an old comic for the first time because every comic I had up till then were newer comics, that I got them when they came out and I had no old comics. So this is technically my first Silver Age comic. And I know how much it costs, obviously, like when my mom bought it for me. And even with a discount, slight discount, the owner had given my mother, it was still expensive. And I knew how hard she had to work to get the money to pay for this book. So it was very, very cool. And that's why this one holds a special place, and I would never get rid of it or sell it. And plus my mom had passed away in 2007. So it's one of those books, that you just can't get rid of it. Wouldn't want to anyway. And last but not least, this is another one that's tied to my parents. This is the Wolverine Limited Series #1. It's not in the greatest of shape. It's got a couple bumps up here, but other than that, it's in actually good shape on a couple water bumps or whatever the hell that is. But the reason this is special is this is the first book I ever got from my first convention. I went to a convention that was near my area. It was actually across the street from Nassau Coliseum. It was like this little itty bitty hotel. It was like their lobby basically had it, and it was just dealers. There was no, movie stars or, celebrities like there are today in conventions. And I was looking around and couldn't really find any books that I wanted that were in any kind of price range because my father was like, you're getting $10. That's it. And again back then it was a lot of money. And I was like, $10. I was like, all right, that's cool. I can get a lot of books with that. But some of the books, like the older ones, especially this one, they were up there. $50, $60, and this was $20. And yeah, actually, I look at it now. It's got a lot of lines on it and stuff like that. But anyway, this was $20, and I looked at it and I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, I didn't really think anything else because I was like, it's way too out of my price range. And I had found a this Venom hologram card that was like a promo card for the future Marvel cards that were coming out. And this guy was like, I was like, how much is that? I was like, I've never seen that before. And the guy's like, it's $10. I'm like, it's a coincidence. So I'm sitting there and I was like, $10. And I kept looking at my phone. I was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to buy it or do you not want to buy it? And I'm like, I was like, it's worth it. It's a promo card. I was like, down the line, who knows? Naive kid. But I just thought it was cool. And he's like, you're going to spend your entire $10 on that? I'm like, yeah, it's worth it. It's really cool. He's like, you're not going to buy any comic books? I'm like, no. I was like, I really want to get this. So he's like, all right. So I got him down. My father got him down to like $8, and I had $2 left over, and I gave it back to my father. He's like, you can keep it. I'm like, no. I was like, it's all right. I got my card, and he's like, what's the problem? He's like, you look kind of disappointed. I was like, well, I didn't get any comic books here. I was like, that's kind of the whole point. I wanted to come here and try to get like some cool comics. And he's like, well, if you had to pick one, what would you pick? And I, right as we were walking out, I'm like, that one. He's like, why do you want that one? And I was like, it's Wolverine. It's his first book, I was like, and my phone was like, who the hell's Wolverine? And I sitting there for like 20 minutes explaining Wolverine to him. And he's like, oh, he's like, yeah. He's like, well, he's like, it's $20. He goes, even if you had your $10 back, he's like, you still would have to have $10. He's like, and you don't have that. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, it's just a really cool book. And I was like, it's one of those ones that, none of my friends have. And, it's a great book. And I just kept going on, and I knew I wasn't getting it. I'm like, there's no way, because my father would never really budge on things. And he went over to the guy, and he's like, how much is that book? And the guy's like, it's $20. And my father's like, $20. He's like, I don't have $20, which he did, but it's my father. He was good at negotiations where I wasn't. And the guy's like, my father's like, what's the best you can do on this book? He's like, my son really wants it. And he's like, a very big Wolverine fan. And the guy's like, I can do 18. And my father's like, he's like, if you make it 15, he's like, you got a deal. And the guy's looking and he's thinking, he's like, no, I can't do 15. There's just no way. So my father's like, all right. He's like, thanks for let me look at it and, have a nice day. And I was looking at it, and I turned it around and I gave it back to the guy, and the guy took it and he looked at it and he's like, you're really a Wolverine fan? I'm like, yeah. I was like, it's a really cool book. It's really nice. He's like, all right. He's like, $15 you got it. And my father's looking at me. He's like, do you have $15? I'm like, no. And he's like, all right. He's like, this is something you really, really want. He's like, more than anything. I'm like, yeah. He's like, but you bought that card. He's like, would you return that card to get this? And I was like, yeah, if I could. I was like, I would. So my father gave the guy $15. I got this book, and my father said that I didn't have to return the card, so it was kind of cool. Not that the guy probably would take a return anyway, but I kept the Venom card, and he's like, all right. He's like, here you go. So this is a book, the first and only book my father ever got me, comic book related, Wolverine #1. Very, very cool. Hope everyone enjoyed this lovely little trip down memory lane. But those are 3 books that are very precious to me, and like I said, I could have pulled out a lot of signed books by McFarlane and Stan Lee, but as much as they do mean something, nothing means as much to me as these 3 books. And if you like what you see, hit the like button. If you like what you see, subscribe. And definitely check out foolkiller 5150, which you probably already are because you can see this on there. It's not the size of your man cave that matters, it's what you have in it. And what you have in it better be some really cool stuff that are worth keeping around. Later.